Whee, that was a game and a half. So, hi, I'm Weston. I love talking about the Rangers, and I'm here to talk about game 54. And game is being generous. This was not a game. This was an event. This was, if you're not a hockey fan, you're going to watch this. This was fight night. There's no other way to put it. This was a brawl from minute 1 through minute 5. This was madness on ice, and there's no other way to describe it. So, everyone knows what happened. If you're not a hockey fan, you probably still know what happened. I was at the gym today, and there was a random TV that was just talking about the fight that happened. There was just a random TV that was on that was talking about Tom Wilson versus the Rangers. So everyone and their brother knew what the significance of the game was. This was going to be a brutal game no matter how you sliced it. We didn't know, I didn't think it was going to be brutal in this way, but I figured there were going to be a lot of tough checks, and I figured at some point or another there would be a fight with Tom Wilson. And boy, oh boy, was there. So going into the game, Georgiev gets the start, and Ryan Strome had the A on his chest. He was named another assistant captain going into the game. And puck drops, and a line brawl. Not a fight off of puck drop, a line brawl. All three of our forwards and all three of theirs immediately lock arms, and they begin getting at it. It was Kevin Rooney versus Nick Dowd, Hagelin versus Blackwell, and Hathaway versus DeGiuseppe. And they all just get into it right off the bat. A lot of haymakers. 3 pretty darn brutal fights. And we are 1 second in, and there is 30 minutes of penalties assessed. And we are not even a second into the game. It was a brutal first few seconds. And I didn't expect it whatsoever. I didn't think it was going to be like this off puck drop, but I did think that's a really strange line to put out first out. Like, that's odd. And now we know why, because they did not intend to have them play hockey. They were going out there to be soldiers at war. After that, this is when the action started. This was the big piece of the game. 50 seconds in, Tom Wilson comes out for his first shift of the ice. And the Rangers fans are booing their heads off. They're screaming at him. They're giving him the 1-2. They're giving him the what-for. And Brendan Smith, Brendan Smith is not a great player. He just isn't. He's not a very good scoring defenseman, and he makes quite a few mistakes defensively. But my goodness gracious, I freaking love Brendan Smith. He is a great team player. He's a great guy in the clubhouse. And this shows it. He is way smaller, both in weight and size, to Tom Wilson. Doesn't care. Doesn't matter. He knows he's going to lose the fight. Like, going into that, you knew he was going to lose the fight. He doesn't care. Immediately, first shift, Wilson's on the ice. Boom. Gets in his face, gives it to him, starts going at him. And I will say this. He did not win the fight. But he held his own really, really well against a bruiser and a goon like Tom Wilson, which was very impressive to me at how well Brendan Smith did to that one. And the Caps would get a power play out of it, but let's be honest. No one cares about the penalties in this game that aren't the fights. No one cares. No one is even relevant to that. That's not what the game is about. And it just simply wasn't. So later on after that, Anthony Boteto and Michael Raffl get into another fight. This is the 5th fight, and I believe we were about 3 minutes into it, which is just madness. This was a total brawl. Immediately. It's popping off. It's popping off. And then after that, off of another face-off. It's Ryan Strome and Lars Eller, neither of whom are fighters, and they get into a fight. And this one, Ryan Strome won pretty hands down. I didn't realize that Strome could actually fight. And you might say, well, it was against Lars Eller, who isn't also a fighter. And I would say, yeah, it's still a fight. And Strome did pretty darn well. And this is the first game in NHL history with 6 fights in the first 5 minutes of play. Which, at this rate, the boxes looked like the clown cars at carnivals. Like, they were just overtly packed. I don't think COVID was very happy about the fights going on, but c'est la vie, it was happening. After that, there was slashing on the Capitals. Rangers would get a power play. Chara would take a slashing call, and the Rangers would get 5-on-3. They wouldn't score. Oshie declined a fight. I think it was with Morgan I forget his last name, actually. I feel really bad. Morgan Barron, excuse me. And I don't blame him. Like, his life is kind of a wreck right now. If you didn't know this about Tyler Roche, his father passed away, I believe, yesterday. So he's just, I don't blame him for not fighting. That's perfectly fine. And I will talk a little bit more about Tyler Roche in a minute. So that happens. A little bit after that, Buchnevich for slashing on Tom Wilson, which is kind of funny. Wilson and Rooney both would get 10-minute misconducts, which, they would both return. Kevin Rooney got a penalty because he did the Tom Wilson big guy buff thing, which was hilarious. And that was, Kevin Rooney, tip of my cap to you. That was fantastic. And Tom Wilson actually wouldn't return because he had a upper body injury. No, he did not have an upper body injury. I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to say that he simply and the coach decided, you know what, there's been 6 fights in 5 minutes. We're done with this. We're not going to keep this going. A little bit after that, great save by Georgiev. Miller got pretty well destroyed, and a player just fell on his leg backwards. It looked real bad. Miller would actually stay in the game and come back pretty quickly after that, so that was a positive. There'd be high sticking for Butch. The Cavs would get a power play. Buchnevich committed a few penalties tonight, and I don't view anything that happened tonight long term. This is all just essentially randomness. I don't view I don't think Buchnevich is now a dirty player or anything. I don't think any of our players are dirty players or fighters. This was a one-time event. This was limited time only, and I don't think anything like this is ever going to happen again for the Rangers. So that happened. After that, Georgiev would actually go airborne and jump to make a save, and then there was high sticking on the puck to make it a goal, which was immediately waved off. And after a first period of hockey, there was 100 penalty minutes assessed, which is insane. There was almost an hour on the Rangers alone for penalty minutes. Can't make this stuff up. So in the second, Tyler Roche would make it a 1-0 game with a power play goal. Wilson, left the game with an upper body injury. And the penalties just kept piling on. This game got really out of hand rather quickly. I'm going to read. There is so many penalties. In the second period, there was a Buchnevich cross-check, which would actually get him ejected from the game, if I'm not mistaken. Which, here's the thing. Tomorrow morning, Pavel Buchnevich is going to get suspended. I'm going to say for 10 games. That's what I'm going to say right now. He's going to get a 10-game suspension and a $5,000 fine. Because the NHL is stupid. So that happened. There was unsportsmanlike conduct against Pavel Buchnevich. Chara would get a misconduct penalty for 10 minutes. Strome would get a misconduct and miss the rest of the game. He would also trip Hagelin. Philip DiGiuseppe with an interference call. I didn't think there was anything there. I thought it was just a normal pick play. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And the Rangers, would get a couple of goals. There was a beautiful laugh goal, which was great. Morgan Barron would get his first of his career to make it a 4-2 game, and Tyler Roche would score another pair of goals after the one that I mentioned to give himself a hat trick, right on the first game after his father's passing, which I like Tyler Roche. I'm not going to be upset because this game for me wasn't about the score or anything. This was about how you respond to what happened with the Tom Wilson incident. And for Tyler Roche, that is just storybook. It's incredible. And I said in a group chat that I'm in immediately after he scored the second goal, I said he's going to get a hat trick because I just knew. I'm just like, he's getting a hat trick. I don't know how. I just had that feeling of this is a storybook. That's what's going to happen. But on the game, right now to the actual bread and butter of the event, the game. I have such mixed emotions about what happened tonight. Because there's the part of me that knows that not one, but 2 of our players were horribly wronged in a way that could have paralyzed one of them and could have potentially ended the career of the other. So really ended both of them's careers. Because if Panarin just hits his head on the ice without the shoulder to cushion it, who knows? If that punch is a little bit harder to Buchnevich, who knows? So in that sense, the Rangers kind of in a way had to go out there and bruise him. In the other sense, I don't believe whatsoever that 2 wrongs make a right. I don't buy that. And so in a part of me hates the fact that tonight we had to go out and just get penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty against the Washington Capitals. Like, I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy that we got into 6 fights tonight. Like, objectively, I'm not happy about it. But the league, in a way, strong-armed us into doing it. The league, in a way, forced our hands to do this. They did. There's no way around it. The league had an opportunity with this Tom Wilson incident. Another incident for him. The 5th one that's big. And this isn't just all the dirty plays that he's gotten away with, because there's so many of those, it almost feels like it's daily that he gets away with. But you had a chance as a league to come in and completely dunk on player safety, on everything. You could have got one of the dirtiest players in the league, probably right now the dirtiest player in the league, out of the league, and just been done with it for at least a year before he appealed the suspension. To dunk on people who say player safety in the NHL is a joke. And you don't. You don't do that. You give him a $5,000 slap on the wrist and say, don't do that again, Tom. And that's it. That's all you give him. And that's unacceptable. Because what happened the other night is not just hockey being rough, man. It's a physical game. This is what hockey's about. That's not what it's about. That isn't hockey. That is just assault, in the words of Blue Shirt Breakaway on podcast. It's just assault. And I agree with that. This isn't hockey anymore. What happened the past 2 nights with Tom Wilson and then tonight. This really wasn't hockey. This was the Rangers being forced to get revenge. Because the league doesn't want to be the adults in the room and actually manage and police their own game. They force other teams, other players, other enforcers and goons to be the cops, to be the sheriffs in these towns. Because they didn't do anything. They gave him a $5,000 slap on the wrist. All of this could have been avoided with a 1-game suspension. Tom Wilson gets the suspension. He's not on the bench tonight. He's not on the ice tonight. None of this happens. It's a normal, everyday hockey game. But no, they couldn't do that. They couldn't even, humor everyone with a 1-game suspension. They say, nope, he's fine, because they want this. Deep down, they want this, because they knew it was going to happen. They knew that the Rangers were going to come back like this. I didn't, but they probably. You had that feeling that they would come out like this. And this boosts ratings. So in a way, we played right into the hand that the NHL wanted us to. And it's just sickening that they do things like that. Like, this is horrifying that this all happened. Like, none of this is good. What happened the other night is horrible. What happened tonight isn't particularly great. Because now, I'm guessing Buchnevich is going to be out. Now, you can mark my words. Tomorrow morning at like 10 o'clock, you're going to get the Elliot Friedman tweet saying Pavel Buchnevich is done for the rest of the year. He's getting a 10-game suspension with $5,000 fine. Book it. Bookmark it. In fact, I'm going to say something else. I think Strome's probably going to get a suspension. I'm going to say he gets a 2-game suspension for the rest of the year. Because, rules don't apply. And Tom Wilson isn't going to get anything, even though they probably should be like, and in hindsight, it all had to do with Tom Wilson being a jerk. So we'll also slap on a 5 or 10 game for him too. But they're not going to do that, because why would they? This was sort of a mess of a game. Now, was it entertaining? Yeah, it was certainly interesting. You're probably never going to see a game like this again. But man, oh man, this is a sad indictment of what the league is coming to. Because all of this could have been avoided with just common sense. To look at what happened with Tom Wilson and what he's done in the past and say, you know what? You're done. You've had more than enough chances. You're done. And they didn't do that. They couldn't do that. And it drives me insane. It drives me up a wall. So I'll be back here tomorrow morning probably talking about the fact that Buchnevich is, done for the year because, that's how the NHL works. And if not, I'll be back here tomorrow night to talk about the Rangers after the Bruins game, which is probably going to be a blowout. But I will still be here afterwards. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and thank you for listening to another one of my rambly videos where I'm just angry about Tom Wilson and the Capitals. So go Rangers.